How are you doing?
Doing well. Yeah. Um, yeah, I feel like some things that just I don't know, I had some wins this week that were kind of cool.
Mm,
A kid that I used to my business partner when I was kind of doing some job site lead for him probably 5 years ago. Was a really good kid, hard worker, really wanted to do quality work. He was a little slow, just kind of getting that. It was kind of his first fast-paced job, but things didn't work out with him, and he messaged me last week and asked if I had any work. And I'm like, unfortunately, I'm really slow. And just kind of talked to him. Sounds like he's going through a lot. He's got a fairly young child and a fiance that they're having some troubles, and he lost a job back in like January or something, way behind on bills and struggling. Obviously, finances are putting attention on the relationship with his fiance and stuff. And just kind of got in conversation with him, and I think I'm going to start coaching him. And it's gonna. I know he's in a really bad place. I don't think he has anything to put towards paid coaching, so we're
hmm
going to start out just doing pro bono coaching, and then kind of go. My goal is kind of see him progress and get some of the financial stuff under control, and then kind of shift that into a lower cost, but some kind of
Yeah,
investment into a paid coaching.
excellent.
So yeah. And then the one of the guys that I've been doing the um, No More Mr. Nice Guy accountability group with, he was shortly after we started, he's like, yeah, I think I'm gonna get into some therapy. And and he's like, don't take that personally. I just feel like I think it was something his wife was kind of encouraging him to do. And I checked in with him on how that was going, and he's like, honestly, like our conversations mean a lot more and are more helpful than the therapy. So that was pretty cool to just, he's seeing a licensed therapist, and to just see how the coaching can show up more powerfully than even therapy can sometimes. So just a really big encouragement to me, like, okay, this is making a difference. This is, the work matters and stuff. So yeah.
Excellent.
Um, and then uh yeah, it's kind of confronted my parents on some things that were going on, kind of struggled with that, whether to I send a text message mostly because my dad struggles to really get what I'm saying in person, phone conversations or whatever.
Mm,
So um, he got the message, hasn't responded. Somewhat, it was very blunt. I tried to not be mean, but very to the point of some of the issues that have kind of keep coming up. So I realized before I sent it, like I was putting it off, and I'm like, well, should I send it? Is it mean? And I realized it was just that kind of nice guy tendency of not trying to really take a stand for things. And was like, you know what? I just need to send this and be confident in calling that out for what it is. So yeah.
excellent. That's excellent, man. Yeah, yeah. And thanks for sending over, just the update there and just speaking to like that's one of the things that you wanted to address was just some of the impacts that your parents have had, for you and also for the grandkids as well. Just gonna put your essence words in the chat here.
Yeah, one of the things like my cousin, I talked to her as well with my grandma not doing well. I've kind of got in touch with her, and that's been really good. She's done marketing for years. Nobody in our family is very good at sales. And so it was interesting talking to her. She asked how business was going, and I'm like, it's a struggle in marketing. She's like, yeah, I'm going to guess you're probably not good at it. Like none of us in our family really are. And so just talking to her about that, and then kind of got into some family dynamics of how she sees some patterns, and um, had a really kind of cool conversation, just really getting into, told her I was trying to get into coaching, and, she was really supportive of that. And just kind of having some family support is really
hmm
great. Um, and she was kind of asking about things with my parents, and I explained the situation to her, and she's like, "I don't understand it." And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't get it." And I guess the thing for me that I really, she gave me some real good challenges that I appreciated, but like I think one of the biggest things for me is isolating the kids from some of those patterns and those behaviors that have affected me. Like I'm willing to let my parents be involved in the kid's life, but at the same time, that feeling of abandonment that I've dealt with, where my parents show up for a while and then go out of the kid's life. Like we're not doing that, and really just standing for that
Mm,
all in, not half-assed relationship with them. Like if you want to be there for the kids, fine, but we're not doing this where you show up for a month and then 2 years later only see each other for Thanksgiving. So.
and how do you feel like that conversation to create that, agreement with them went?
So I haven't heard back from my dad. Want to check back with him, and just kind of touch base with him. I'd like to have probably be best to have an in-person conversation
Hmm.
after that and just kind of go over with him where he's at on that. I'm gonna guess he took it. My dad's funny. Like if I try to be fairly blunt, and he's very literal, and so when I'm not like, you have to be like almost overly blunt, like
Mm,
almost mean to get the point across, and then he gets his feelings hurt. So it's a challenge to communicate clearly with him,
hmm.
um, sometimes. But I'm gonna guess it stung, the conversation, the message that I sent him. I'm sure stung. And I just ended it with, I really hope that you don't take this as anything other than really trying to have a relationship that, you know, is all in and not half-assed, and really, calling him forward to it. So hopefully, you know, I was going to let him kind of process it a little bit and then try and touch
Hmm.
base and follow up with it.
Okay, sounds good. And is there anything else that you want to speak to, that maybe you haven't, or just want to share before we jump into some coaching for today?
I don't think so. I think that pretty well sums it up.
Okay. Um, is there anything that you need before going into the coaching session? Any grounding or meditation or just practices, anything that's there for you?
I don't think so. I guess one other cool kind of thing that I just got off a call before we got on here with doing a webinar on doing some financial coaching. So probably not something I can quite afford to do, go into the training because give me certification for financial coaching,
Hmm.
possibility of getting some leads through them as well. But it was a good um, webinar just to kind of get some more background in coaching, a little, different perspectives, different ideas, different possibilities. And yeah, I mean, I think with this kid that I'm talking to as well, having a little bit, going through that, and I don't know that it's
Hmm.
necessarily, I think just having that certification and just having a little bit of, um, would give me a little more confidence in some of those things. You know, um, but I definitely feel like it's something I can go into um, without the certification. Just it was a good opportunity just to kind of to push the possibilities of where coaching can go next. And um, probably one of the bigger things I'm interested in is going through their program, and then as I'm getting started, getting some um, referrals from clients and things. So
For sure. Yeah, sounds good. And I mean, definitely something we can talk about more too, as you continue to just decide, is this actually the program that I want to do, and
right,
putting your energy towards that.
yeah, yep.
Well, sounds good. Okay, so in our coaching session today, I know that you sent over the initial request, a couple places that we could look. What is it that you'd like to explore or experience in our session today?
I guess at this point, I don't have like a huge like nagging thing that I really feel like needs to be addressed at the moment. I've got a lot of irons on the fire right now that's, trying to juggle a lot of things between personal and business and all of that. But I think, there's areas to explore in each one of those, I think. I guess I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are, if there's any things that you've seen show up or what you have observed.
Well, yes. The
Mhm.
easy answer is yes. And like you talked about, hey, the potential of exploring, attachments. If I bring that in, and you can probably
Mhm.
speak to it better than me, but let me just scroll up here. Yeah, like, oh, you said actually abandonment, right? You know, the abandonment rejection that shows up in adult life, like that could be a place for us to explore. And I would also say that this is this place where you are, you know, in terms of like, hey, there's nothing potentially that's like lingering or like an immediate fire. That can be a great place as well, because what that does is that actually gives us a space to actually now step out into the unknown and just create in the conversation with what is most needed, you know. And when I say most needed, it's really actually tuning into, in this moment, you know, you may not know the path, you may not know the place necessarily to explore, but if you just allow yourself to sort of jump out, what shows up for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think um, just from that, just one of the things I think that I'm really trying to work on is shifting, like I'd mentioned too, just getting. There's just been a lot of things like I want to spend a little more time on the clearing exercise. I went through it, but want to go back and
Hmm.
visit it more. Um, I feel like recently between we've been trying to eat healthy at our home, so I've got, no frozen pizzas and stuff for the kids. So there's a lot of nights where we get to pull food out to thaw and stuff like that and making meals from scratch. So that's time consuming. And there's just a lot of things between the kids and some of the needs that they've had here in the last week and showing up for them and, um, you know, juggling the masculine unleashed and juggling, uh, group calls and coaching with you and the homework with you and then the clients that I'm working with and all of that just and then business I had some bids to work on this week. So it's kind of I mean it's using my ADD to its full extent to be able to bounce and pivot and actually using that beneficially, but like going a million different directions and just really working on like finding tools that are to organize that course that you put up on the site to kind of work on that is something I started on before you even mentioned it. But just kind of working through those things, like okay, finding as I get busier, but it's not like typical busy where it's just leave the house at 6 in the morning and go work on a job site and it's focused in one area. Really finding ways to be efficient and organized, balancing between, I mean, I've got a stack of 10 different notebooks on my desk for
Hmm.
different things, and pages get buried and trying to figure out ways to, transcribe that all into documents that can stay organized and stuff like that. So, that's one of the big things I think right now that's showing up is just being very intentional and very organized in keeping that bigger chaos under control. And then staying, up to date on the different deadlines and doing a better job scheduling, throughout the day.
Sure. And so, you know, a place even just to connect within that is what for?
Well, yeah, just to create more, I guess, that's what I'm looking for, more structure, more less chaos, to take those
Mm.
all those different things that are all different directions between being a single dad right now to continuing my construction business to working on coaching to um, and even my cousin brought up, a side job she's been kind of doing is reselling stuff, which is something I talked about last year. And it was great just having her encouragement to do that. But there's a whole nother area of like putting up post listings and dealing with replying to people that are interested in things. Like it's a whole nother level of conversation. Like, I mean, I've got, you've got stuff that I'm selling and you've got coaching clients and then coaching with you. And then I've got the kids and
Hmm.
family and all of these things going on, and it's just all over the place and finding a way that in my mind is all solidified and it's not just chaos from the time I wake up till the time I go to bed, trying to wondering what things I'm forgetting, wondering what things are being left undone, and those kind of things.
Yeah. And I mean, there's definitely a place for us, where we can get into a conversation around efficiency and that type of thing. But a place to also just connect to is like when you're in the chaos or you've got a lot of things going on, let's even say it gets overwhelming. How do you feel about yourself?
I feel good though. I mean, I've got this like
Hmm.
that good feeling of busyness. Um, and I kind of feel like I'm
Yes.
thriving on that, where um, I want to get it more controlled because it feels a little chaotic and out of control, but that chaos, if it could be shifted into busyness, feels good. So
Yeah.
yeah, and just I mean, for one, I think powerful and in charge control of the situation. Like there's a lot going on,
Mm.
but it's a lot of, I mean, all different angles and assets of my life or, that are all just to feel like, yeah, I'm showing up in all these areas. I mean, there's
Yep.
whatever, 10 different areas that I'm showing up in. And, being patient with myself of getting into a routine because it's sometimes like, oh, I didn't spend as much time on our homework as I wanted, or I didn't spend as much time as the kids with I wanted, and then not beating myself up, but just going, yeah, you're juggling a lot of different balls right now. So you haven't dropped any of them, almost maybe dropped a couple, but nothing's actually dropped. And you're juggling 10 things, not just bouncing one ball, not just tossing two balls. Like there's a lot going on. And just I guess a sense of pride in that of, yeah, you got this, it's under control. I think especially too in the place where I'm at where I don't have a lot of support, um, just realizing like you have this and you know, life has been tough, but it's also taught me how to. It was something that my coworker brought up was like the relationship with my parents. He's like, how does that relationship help you? He's like, you're far stronger than your parents are. You juggle more, you handle more. I mean, and just looking at that, like where my dad's at, he's retired from a management position, but he doesn't know how to juggle stress like I do at this point in my life because I have the
Hmm.
management, I have the all these other facets of life going on that are like, okay, yeah, that I am pushing myself. I am, stretching myself. I am kind of living on the edge and then playing with that edge. Like, is how much more can I take on? Should I back off on certain areas?
Sure.
And just even pushing myself to delegate more stuff to my kids where they're getting done with school. And so instead of them sitting around all day playing on their phones, like I gave them a list of chores to do today. Hey, this could be done, this could be done, get some yard work done, and just doing better at delegating those things and letting them just, manage their time, fail at managing their time and learning and all of those things.
Yeah. Well, and the intention that I hear that you're, wanting to create as a lifestyle is like, I want to show up. These things that I'm committing to, I want to show up powerfully. So that's who you are, in your essence, is that. And a piece there might not necessarily be something here, but a piece to just be connected to is yes, and what happens when, like you're maybe not in this moment, but when you're on that edge of I'm juggling a lot of balls, maybe I'm showing up a bit scattered, maybe I'm not completing my practices as much as I want to. How does that feel?
Yeah, I mean, there's a side of it that I initially want to beat myself up for, like I guess feeling like I'm lacking in integrity to a certain
Mm,
degree.
hmm.
Um, but then again, that's where that side of patience with myself and grace to myself shows up. And it's like, yeah, but you are juggling a lot. I mean, so it rather than it being consuming of like discouragement of like, oh, you're, lazy or you're failing, you're not showing up in these areas, you're not being your authentic self. It's like, okay, so how do I do that? How do I step into that without it being like, I guess, the negative self-talk that I've showed up in the past where it's like, oh, you're a loser, you're failing. It's like, okay, yeah, so I didn't do as much on that. That's okay. Not great, but it's okay. Now what do we do? How do we, overcome that? How do we push past that and do show up powerfully in that area? How do you restore that
Hmm.
integrity? What needs to be done? You know, fine tuning those practices that I have in place to be just a little more efficient.
Hmm. Okay. So from the conversation that we're having so far, what do you feel is most needed in terms of the next step of your direction? What is it that you're really wanting to have happen here?
Well, I think like from a practical standpoint, the next step is okay, so I've got all these things going on. Zero of them are actually creating revenue in my life.
Mm,
So, like, okay, that's cool that I've got two free coaching clients. That's cool I've got these things going on. That's cool that I can serve people and help people in this way. It's cool that I've been responsible financially and have, you know, set money aside for savings, but that is getting low.
hmm.
So let's really focus in on, okay, what direction do I need to go to actually start getting some revenue flowing, getting some money, you know, cash flow happening. I think it's probably really the next thing of like where are these areas, one, putting a little more priority on the things that are going to create revenue. Um, and then second of all, really just yeah, really focusing on those things. And if it's not something in that group that's already there, that's going to bring money, continuing to just, I guess, have that visionary side of, okay, what else can create cash flow here?
Hmm. Hmm. Now, do you feel like that's a conversation that we need to have in terms of like what does these next steps look like in terms of generating revenue? Or is there even, another conversation for us to really focus on?
Well, I think like um, I've got some ideas. I mean, I've got a bid that I need to send off this afternoon. I kind of don't think the client's going to do it. I think it's too high for what she wants to spend. Um, don't know. I mean, we're going to find out. I'm not like beating myself up. Just materials are
Hmm.
incredibly high right now. I think, you know, just that encouragement from my cousin yesterday to, hey, let's, push yourself to really, what stuff do you have sitting around that you can sell from kids' clothes that don't fit anymore all the way to, you know, uh, the boat we don't take out that much or those kind of things.
Hmm.
And she just really encouraged me. I'm like, well, the market's not very good right now. And she's like, yeah, but it's sitting in your field, not making you money right now. Like any money's better than no money. And it's like, yeah. So I think just going, figuring that out and all right, yeah, like maybe it's not what I wanted to make off of it, but there's, it's money to be made. I've got the time to list it and deal with it right now. So why am I not?
Hmm.
And list it for what I want and then decide when I get lowballed, is that worth it to just have it out of my hair? Or what do I do? What steps do I take there? Um, so there's all that. You know, I guess too, another conversation that I need to like have with my work through on my own is just like, you know, with this um guy that I've been doing coaching with, like, am I showing up in a way that's in integrity to request some payment from this guy? I mean, if he was paying for therapy that wasn't worth the money, well, let's say it was whatever, $100 a session, and I have a higher value than that. Do I need to step into that of like, hey, you know, like I'm bringing value to your life. You were paying this other guy,
Hmm.
this therapist, $100 an hour, and you are quitting because our free conversation brings more value. So essentially, what value does this conversation bring to your life?
Hmm.
And really just stepping into that place of like calling that out for what it is. Um, and, being honest with myself, the amount of time that I spend on that is distracting me from the potential of doing other things that would actually bring in money. Like, can I afford to keep doing this, in a 24-hour day? Do I have time to spend this much time with these people that aren't meeting the needs of my family and my household, I guess?
Sure. Well, and um, does that feel like a place for us to direct this conversation towards is that, around the ownership of you charging a fee?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something we could go into. I mean, again, even talking with my cousin yesterday about marketing, like, and it comes, which probably the place to back up, I think that really stems from is that conversation maybe of, and I don't know how in depth we have to go, but that struggle, like me working on that childhood wound of abandonment or self-worth or those kind of things. Um, because I've realized like I've just seen several things that kind of mention like how that shows up in adulthood. And I'm
Mm,
like, okay, yeah, I know I have these issues and I've been working on those. And then it was like right after that I had that revelation, then it was like, and I feel like my parents are abandoning me still. I feel like my wife or soon to be ex-wife is abandoning me still. I
mm,
feel like my kids are abandoning me still. Um, there's times where I feel like my coworkers abandoned me. I feel like
mm,
I still send out all these quotes and people come back and say they're too high. And so I still have that feeling of like, okay, I guess I'm not, I taking that personally and internalizing it to, I guess I'm not worth X number of dollars an hour. And, so I think to really go through that a little bit and just really, accept what that says about me or doesn't say about me is probably the conversation to have before we go into what do I charge per hour for a skill that I'm seeing I have value in, but a year ago never thought of charging for.
yeah. Well, and thanks for seeing that for yourself too, in terms of like what is the conversation that's most needed because um well, one, as you're speaking to it, that feeling of abandonment, and then that other piece that I will say of rejection, when you put when you put out a quote, whether it's for your business or whether it's for coaching or for a relationship, that what is present here is that all pathways sort of lead to the same place of you feeling rejected and abandoned.
Right. Yep. Yeah, because like you spoke to it perfectly, it's a quote gets rejected. I offered, I mean, marketing is, you're marketing yourself. So to a certain
Hmm.
degree, relationships are marketing. Feeling like what I had to offer my wife wasn't, there was no market for that to her. And so it
Mm,
all kind of comes back to this whole thing of like, am I marketable in any sort of a way, whether that's a friend, whether that's intimate partner, whether that's a father, whether that's a, coach or a contractor or, the things that the junk I have laying around, is it marketable? Um, or
yeah.
will I be rejected? And I think a lot of what's held me back is with the situation with my wife, with the situation with my kids, there's a very subconscious fear of more rejection and what that's going to do to me.
Mm,
Um, if I already feel rejected in five areas, if I list something for sale and nobody bites, well, there's number six way of being rejected. And then if
yeah.
I, put this out there that, hey, I think we should step into doing some paid coaching. And then I just think we end the conversation here. There's rejection number seven. And it's like, at what point is my breaking point of being rejected?
Yes. Yeah, I totally get that. And so, okay, so here we are with this current dynamic, both past current dynamic that's here with regards to rejection, and also to get clarity on well, how would you want it to be? How would you want this experience to be that when you put yourself out into the world, offer yourself in any of these capacities, how do you want it to go?
Well, obviously, I mean, simply like some point of acceptance, you know,
Hmm.
um, obviously very basically, but like at some point, some people are like, yeah, I would love to partner with you. Yeah, I would love
Mm,
to be in a relationship with you. Yeah, I would love to. I see your value, you know. I mean, hell, I mean, if you want to play hard on it, is that all you're charging? You know, like
sure.
to a certain degree. Like, wow, I appreciate the value in that, you know, and just acknowledging for that. Because I have had customers in the past, they're like, just it seems weird to come from me, but I'm going to tell you, like, you're offering a far better service, far more higher quality for little or less, you know, less than what I quoted somebody else quoted me. Like, I hate to tell you this, don't use it against me, but you don't charge enough. You know,
Hmm.
and so that I mean that feels good to hear like, oh, I I am underselling myself. I need to raise that versus the conversation of like, what the hell? I can't, that's ridiculous. Where are you coming from charging that much? So I mean, you know, those areas of like, I guess feeling accepted, um, you know, I guess that's where it feel good. Whether that's what needs to be done for that, that was probably the real conversation.
Sure. Well, and so one part of it that I hear is creating a pathway to actually getting some wins.
Hmm.
Actually being able to put an offer out into the world and having it be received and taken forward. Fair? Like fair as
Hmm.
one place to explore.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So now the other side of it though, how do you want to be when, let's say, rejection does occur in the future?
Well, I think subconsciously and sometimes consciously that thought process of never being good enough for my dad or feeling like I was never good enough, which I've had the conversation with him a year ago that it's really comes down to he was trying to push me to excel and to do more. And at this point in life, he thinks I'm better at everything that he taught me than he was. So I have exceeded him. But there's that struggle of like, okay, um, but there's always that part of me, that childhood wound that's still not fully healed that goes,
Mm,
yep, see, you're not, you were never, your dad told you you'd fail at business. Your dad told you, you know, X, Y, or Z. And there you go. There's proof, you know, case number 1053 that your dad was right, you know,
hmm.
and um, yeah. So I think there's that level of just really accepting, like, one, when my dad said that he is proud of me, that he feels like I have, you know, achieved more than he expected, to really own that and be like, okay. So as a child, that criticism and lack of encouragement came across as he wasn't proud of me. He just never spoke to that. And he has now, you know, not to the amount of times that I was criticized, but really just accepting it for that. Like, you did receive it. And I guess realistically, if I didn't receive it, accepting that I've done my best.
Hmm. So, as we unpack this more, what you're speaking to is, I mean, at least from what I'm hearing, is that this feeling of rejection that's, built up over the years and a really hard place to be with has largely stemmed from how your dad treated you and raised you growing up.
Yeah, and I think from my dad, it was the more mechanical, the more physical side. I think my mom probably had the same level, but it was on a more religious side that I was never
Hmm.
um, measuring up to her religious standards that she had too. So I kind of had it from both angles,
Mm,
and both very emotionally unpresent parents. So, just a lot of criticism from both sides.
yeah. And how does that impact you now?
Well, I think it's affected my relationships, my relationship with my mom, and her lack of emotional availability has definitely affected like where I show up with women. I mean,
Mm,
going back to finding emotionally unavailable women to try and fix that relationship, prove that I can fix that relationship with my mom where it was unemotionally unavailable. Um, and I think also there's a side of me that doesn't play as aggressively as I should.
mm,
I play within bounds far enough that there's not a risk of failure.
yeah.
So I don't play hard enough to the hoop to actually meet my full potential because, well, I know I can accomplish this, so I'm going to do this. Well, I know I can accomplish this, so I'm going to do this. I mean, in business, I don't take a job that I really don't know how I'm going to do it, knowing every single cost of it, breaking it all down. I mean, I'm not one that just throw numbers off the cuff. I want to go figure every nail, every screw on a project. And there's guys out there that are like, I don't know, yeah, give them this price. And I'm
Hmm.
like, well, what if you fail? And
Hmm.
I think that fear of failure is so strong with me that it's like I have to control every variable to make sure that I don't fail. And so that limits a lot of the scope of work you can do if you're only taking jobs or getting into relationships are going to be successful.
Hmm.
Or I
Yeah.
mean, in the case
And
of intimate relationships, knowing they're not going to be because they're replays of my relationship with my mom that still has struggles.
sure. And because what's on the other side of failure? If you put yourself out there, you put yourself on the edge or into the unknown, and then you fail, what does that mean about you?
That I am a failure, first of all. And I think the other part too is a lack of network of support. Who catches me when I fail? Who catches, like, I don't have anybody to fall back on when I fail. If I
Mm,
fail if I lose my home, where the hell do my kids and I live? Like, if I go bankrupt and I lose my home, where are we going to live? In a tent in a campground year round? Like,
hmm.
what options do we have? We don't have somebody to fall back on,
Yeah,
And so, yeah, there's that level of it too, I think, of
right. So if we kind of put these puzzle pieces together, that as you spoke to, right, that basically that, hey, you've created this dynamic where the dynamic is controlled. You don't actually have to put yourself out on the line to be with failure, because if you did, well, then it reaffirms that you're a failure and you don't have the support structure around you to actually like be there for you as we're putting these pieces together. What ends up being the impact of that, both on your life now, but also stepping into the future?
well, a very safe, um, unfulfilling life. Like
Hmm.
a part of me knows that I can accomplish more, that I can do more, that there's um, more to be had than what I'm playing for.
Yes. Yep. Okay. So, okay, we're clear on, what's at stake for the future here and a real place of checking in with yourself. So, what do you feel is needed for you to be able to um, heal this relationship, even to success and failure?
And that's hard, like with the kids and the situation I'm in with the kids. Like, I mean, there's a situation where I wasn't able to be at home 2 years ago, and I stayed with my parents and had a visit with my kids during that time, and they're like, nope, grandkids aren't coming over. And that was a horrible place to be at because it was like a lot of the dirty laundry around the situation had to get aired out to my ex-wife, and that caused even more problems. But like that point of like no options felt very scary, but also completely out of my control. Not being able to see my kids because of something that had happened, that, accusations were made, whatever, and not having any, my parents let me stay with them, but the grandkids weren't allowed over,
Mm,
which is like, okay, so what happens if that happens again? Like, I don't ever want to be in that position again where, not for myself, I mean, I can sleep in my truck. I'm not worried about that. But who do the kids have for a fallback structure? Like, I think that's, you know, something that I need to figure out and create relationships that with the relationships the kids have with their moms that aren't healthy and aren't good. And, you know, what if, for one, what happens to the kids if something happens to me? I mean, if I get killed in a car accident, what happens to my kids? Like, where do they
hmm
go? What life do they have without me in it? And so, cultivating and creating relationships where there are people who, you know, are there to help, which my coworker is definitely one of those people. I mean, I have no doubt that he would, at least my oldest son would for sure take him to,
hmm
um, and, but just finding that kind of support where there is that. And that's the level I think where I struggle with that relationship and some of those conversations with my coworker is like, if I lose that relationship where I'm at in life, like that is the one person I know that I can call. And if I can't make it for my kids, he will be there. If I need somewhere to go for whatever my house burns down or whatever emergency crisis happens, there is somewhere to go there. And there is that
hmm
fallback plan. And so then I play safe on really calling that relationship to more, because what if I piss him off and he did, that's the end of our relationship? Then there went my last straw of support.
Sure. So, again, if we sort of connect these dots, the piece that I'm present to is like here we are in this conversation about you facing, rejection, the abandonment that's occurred, right? That's what's in front of us right now. Rejection, whether it's in future intimate relationship, gaining clients, getting quotes, like that's what's in front of us. That's what's, in on the horizon. But as you start to link it to these other areas, like, well, facing rejection means that I'll have to be with this feeling of failure. And I don't like failure because I don't have control over those variables. And when I don't have control over the variables, my safety for my family could be at risk. And so the reason why I'm pointing that out to you is like, look at where like look at where we've arrived from just the fear of rejection.
Mhm.
That underneath the fear of rejection, way down below is if I take that risk, if I do that thing, what about the safety of my family, of my, my circle right now? What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I think that explains a lot of where, I mean, I think it 100% explains where my business is at. I think it's why I have a struggling slash failing business versus a couple hundred, $500,000 a year company.
Hmm.
Um, which is ironic. I think it goes back to that paradigm shift of like, so I'm trying so hard to control and so hard to play it safe, just that I have a failing business. So instead of playing hard, which, you know, higher stakes, higher risk, I've constrained that so much that I've created the failure that I was trying to avoid.
Hmm.
And so it's one of those like kind of goes back to that nice guy tendency of like, well, I don't want to play if I this idea that I have is going to keep me safe, but clearly it's not keeping me all that safe. I mean, to a
Hmm.
certain extent it is. So a certain extent last summer I was able to make enough money to get me
Yes.
the months that I didn't have work and get through those, but I'm not playing to the level that I could where I could potentially not even have that problem to be stressed about for months in the first place.
Hmm. Yeah, great awareness on that. And so, what do you see from here?
Well, I think, one is doing a little more networking and creating some establishing really deep, authentic relationships with people where I do know to a certain level that my kids' safety is always taken care of. That there is a fallback plan. Because I mean, a fairly real fear to have that, I mean, something could happen to me. And that's for three of my kids, that's a big deal to their life. That greatly affects their future and their outcome of life. Um, so finding people to be supportive in that. Um, and then I think too, just finding areas. One of the things that I think I need to do is create a LLC or a couple LLCs that will shelter my personal assets more to where
Hmm.
I can play a little riskier in business. So if I do get sued, like, okay, my business went bankrupt. That's not cool, but my kids and I are out of a home because everything we own didn't get taken.
Hmm.
Um, because there's that level, like, I know, well, and even I look back at like the entrepreneurial things I did in high school, I was risky because why not? I didn't have anybody relying on me. I was young, I was strong, I had endless possibilities and no responsibilities, so I could play fast and loose on everything, and who cares? You know, um, I mean, it's part of the reason like I don't am not as involved in like snowmobiling and dirt biking. Like if I go out west and snowmobile and get killed in a avalanche, who do my kids have? Like,
Hmm.
and some of those things where it's like, okay, yeah, I can get a life insurance policy, but that doesn't provide a father for them. And, so some of those things where it's like really identifying, yeah, that's a lot of that fear isn't even so much probably directed back to upbringing as much as just really high stakes for my kids. And so what needs
Sure.
to be done to create that safety net for them?
Hmm.
Who can I bring into their life that, I mean, my son's got his license now. My daughter will have her license next year. Like those two, they're in an age where even if they end up with custody, in the care of their mom, they have the means to go seek out other people and those people that I could set up for them to be supportive of them. My youngest son's going to be a little more difficult, but finding ways to create those safety nets for the kids.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously it's a great place to explore in terms of like, hey, what do I need to be put in place and be responsible for to create those safety nets for, my family. And I would also put to you that there's something bigger here to be with. And what's present for me is What if you did nothing? You died today. What is the real fear there?
To care of my kids,
Hmm.
so their well-being.
Right. And so the piece that's there though is that there is a you're gone, you're out of the picture, and my hunch of it is that your concern is that my kids won't be taken care
Hmm. Yeah,
of. So if you stay with that, what what can you sense that keeps you attached?
attached to them or attached in what way?
Well, in a sense, like I would say that you're hooked, right? So you are hooked to the well-being of your children to such a degree that it keeps you safe. It keeps you cautious.
Hmm.
It doesn't actually let you live and be the greatest version of yourself that you want to be. Does that make sense?
It does, and like I kind of checked myself with that this week, like struggling and spending more and more savings money, going like, do I just need to go get a job? And there's two, like I got on and started looking at some job opportunities, like factory jobs, which goes against, I mean, owning my business is kind of the last dream that I'm holding on to. And I'm like, the kids need food. I have to take care of my kids. Like, screw
Hmm.
my dreams. The kids need a house to live in. And I started looking at it. And I mean, a couple things came from that. One is like, there was a factory that I have a couple customers that have worked at, and I looked at their hiring, and there's like five positions, very from maintenance to machine operator to management. And I'm like, I have probably marketable skills for every single one of the four positions that they have open in a pay range between 50,000 to $100,000 a year. Like, and so part of me is like, well, that'd be kind of nice to have steady, some of them are salary incomes, like with benefits and all these things. But then that side of me said, but are you doing that because you want to? Can you enjoy, is that the life you want, or is that just further playing it safe? And I really came to the conclusion like, if I have to do that, one, it's good to know that I have marketable skills. If it's like,
Hmm.
survival situation, yep, unfortunately, I have to give up the dream of entrepreneurship. And in the job, it's a 3 on, 4 off, 4 on type schedule. So I'd have some time to do some of my own things still. So it's good to know that that's an option. But then I realized like that's the easy way out. And I don't want to take that easy way out yet. Like I'm not ready to just take that because it's got a nice paycheck at the end of the day and I hate it. And
Hmm.
I'm essentially doing the life my dad did that I was determined to do differently with my kids, where I could involve my kids in my work. And I wasn't working third shift and I wasn't present for my kids. Like that was my reasonings for being self-employed. And here I am going and looking at that as an option, which it is, but really that's the easy way out. That's
Hmm.
not one, there's no, yeah, there's a little bit of putting myself on the line to get rejected from an interview or whatever. Um, one of the thoughts my dad applied at this place years ago and was rejected. And I'm like, oh, my dad didn't get a job there. Can I? And I'm like, but dad's told me that I excel in my skills that he had.
Hmm.
So maybe I could get that job. Well, that'd kind of feel good. But at the end of the day, that's again playing it too safe. Like I don't want to, I'm not ready to go that safe yet.
Sure. Yeah, I get that. Um, and so if you just even bring it back to, this conversation around facing rejection. Um, what would you ultimately need to feel safety in providing for your family or being there as the father figure for your family, being that, trying to find fancy words of it, but just being the figurehead, that foundation for them, but to also have safety in taking that step out onto the edge, pursuing the things that might feel out of your control, but not so out of control that you're way out on the off into the horizon, off into the places that you've never been. Very confusing way of how I explained that, but really just how do you create that safety so that you can actually get out of that. I'm going to say, like, we'll call it the mediocrity zone, to actually step into your power and create more of what you want in life.
Well, I think, like I said, I mean, I think this relationship with my cousin's a good opportunity for my kids to have some family.
Mm,
My cousin, her husband, are a little older than me. They don't have any kids. Like, um, it's an opportunity. They're both willing to. My cousin's husband's really into fishing and wants to take my son fishing, and I think my daughter and my cousin could get along. So just building that relationship and creating some, um, again, just support, whether that's me out of the picture or just, especially for my daughter, a woman that she can go to at her age to have that support as a young woman that I
hmm
can't provide as a man.
mm,
Um, and so there's that level of it. Um, and then, further building that in different areas, creating, you know, maybe having godparents or something like that set up for the kids, like, you know, and really having clear agreements with people. Like if something does happen, you're those people. Um,
mm,
and then, and I think that just gives me that peace of mind that it's not an expectation that I have that it's my cousin or whoever. And what if that wasn't, like with my parents, where they've shown up sometimes and I'm like, okay, the kids have their grandparents. Well, then they disappear because there never was really that full agreement of that's what
mm.
we're doing here. So I think really having clear agreements with people as that is the place we're at. Um, and then I think probably, the next level to that is, just creating the avenues that I need to for business to be able to play, um, without so much personal risk, such as getting an
mm.
LLC or some of those things.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear what you're speaking to. Really. So, what do you see to take on as concrete practices from here?
Well, I think like finding godparents is going to be a bit of a process. I don't know that that's something I can really put a deadline on per se. I mean, unless it's, because that's developing. At this point, I don't really have relationships that are even close to that point.
Hmm.
So, that's something that's probably the soonest is something by the end of this year for something
Sure.
like that, you know, to really develop, for one, me to develop that trust to someone, and two, for my kids to develop that trust with someone to be in that role for them. Um, and then as far as an LLC, I mean, that's something I could take action on immediately. Um, Probably one of the things that I need to just get clear on, and it'd flow right into the whole business project that I'm working on, is what is that LLC going to be? Is that Dave Childers Enterprises? Is that Custom Home Innovations LLC? Is that my, Dave Childers Coaching LLC? Like what's the umbrella that comes under that? Like what specifically is that LLC performing as? Is that the rental business that I've talked about? Like really getting clear on what,
Yeah.
I mean, probably an overall LLC that's just David Childers Enterprises that anything could fall under to
Okay.
create that, and then whether I want to branch off and have separate LLCs out from underneath that
Hmm.
all along the way is fine. Um, so yeah, I think getting clear on that and um, creating that safety net so that when the opportunity arises to play a little risky on some things, it's like, you know, not that fear of like, okay, so I take out a huge loan on something and that defaults, and then the bank comes back for my home or whatever
Yeah.
else.
Yeah,
Or
for
a
sure.
client sues for the clothes off my kid's back, because that's essentially when you're a sole proprietor, that's what can happen. So,
Sure.
like, really setting up that safety net to where it's, there's that. I still have to keep a sole proprietorship going, but create some of those more reckless companies, as I guess I'm going to call it, to play unsafe, and
Hmm.
that's okay. You know, make an opportunity to, have higher risk and higher reward, and protect against the higher risk as much as possible. Mitigate that risk.
Sure. So when will you have the LLC completed by?
Um, I'm gonna lump the decisions on getting it in with my business project for next week. And then as far as I need to look into seeing how long it takes to register the LLC, because there's some, I don't know how long it takes um to do all the registration. I guess I can set a date for creating the LLC. Um Off the top of my head, I know my wife has a bunch of information. She knows how to do it. She looked into it for my coworker and I, but so probably just having a conversation with her to kind of know, um, because at this point I don't have a clue what the legal
Okay.
process and time frame that is. So
Okay, we'll
probably
throw out a
a good
date. Like throw out a date in terms of like, even
collecting
with not
information.
knowing, not knowing how long it'll take. Like when do you want to have this LLC in place by?
Um,
May 27th today.
yeah. So to have it up and running, I'd say end of July for
Okay.
for it to be fully, you know, through all the steps.
Excellent.
And
Okay, so
obviously, if
there's your
that's
marker. Your marker is end of July. And when will you have the conversation with your wife?
um, that's a tricky one because I don't know when she's available, which has been a whole other interesting
Can you do it
dynamic of
within
this
two
past
weeks?
week. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, great. So by June 10th?
Yep.
Awesome. Um, in terms of the finding godparents conversation, are you okay if I offer you something here?
Hmm.
So where you're looking is great in terms of actually getting that solidified as like an agreement and on that path. As you spoke to, there is some trickiness in this, right? To find the people that you can trust to be able to do that, in this moment. It's not there for you, right? And the thing that I would offer you is like have an emergency plan up until you find those godparents, right? Because I can
Okay.
imagine, again, my hunch of it would be that like right now, because you don't have a agreement or a framework of what's in place, that itself creates a lot of stress.
Hmm.
I'm kind of saying that it creates a lot of stress. It may not, but
No, I mean, I think subconsciously it does.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's even shown up this week with just some needs that my daughter's had that
yeah,
I'm not in a great position to meet those. And it's, I don't like that. Like,
yeah,
you know, she needs a woman in her life. And
yeah,
I probably blame myself for failing to provide that for her. Like, you know, um, whether that's, fair or not, that is how I feel. Like,
yeah.
I've been in a relationship with women that haven't stuck around to be that person for her.
Yeah. And so that that could be a place of just putting some focus towards is like who could be those people now? Even if it is, mom and dad, it's like having that conversation with mom and dad to actually create some sort of agreement of like, hey, if David dies tomorrow, where are the kids going?
And I don't, this is the struggle. And I mean, it came into
Yeah.
conversation with my cousin yesterday is I don't think my parents would do it. I think my parents would never, essentially never see their grandkids again before they
Mm.
agreed to that. And that's where there's a lot of pain still around. Like that's where my
Yeah.
current struggle with my parents really comes down to is like you won't fine disagree with my lifestyle, disagree with my choices in life and my mistakes and failures, but show up for your grandkids.
Yeah.
Like they didn't have a say in this. You know, they didn't get to choose who their parents were. The only thing that my parents could actually do is ensure that they had people to lean on. And it's even shown up with my younger two daughters, where I've asked them for support to reach out to them and they refuse. And it's like, okay, well, I'm doing everything I can. They don't want to talk to me.
Hmm.
I've asked them to, and they're not. So, but I mean, I think there are other people with
Yeah.
even my coworker,
Yeah.
but
And
that just touches to
but
another layer
that's
of the
but
situation with my
that's the
parents.
piece to start getting some clarity on and having these conversations of where could the kids actually go if God forbid something happens to you, right? Because right
Hmm.
now it's an incomplete space for you. It's up in the
Yep.
air.
Hmm.
So what do you see to just happen next? Obviously, like you said, maybe not it's not godparents, today, but what is the next step for you to take to help create that safety and peace for yourself?
Well, I think just having some less formal conversations with some people, like, you know, um, and probably a huge thing I need to do. It's probably not something that, given the current situation with all the other things going on, that I'm not. It's probably something I should set for a goal, like by the end of the year, is getting some kind of a living will set up for the
Yeah.
assets that I have, because I have quite a bit of assets, and God forbid something happens to me, that's not going to go to my kids at the place I'm at. So,
Yeah.
like, you know, setting that up which is again really difficult, not knowing if I have that stable, reliable person in my life, who do you set as executor of that or to handle all of that, is a really tough, like, call to make because,
Yeah.
um, sure, it could be my business partner. Well, and we could have a fight next week where if I died next week, he takes all my assets and my kids get nothing. I mean, I don't think he
Yeah.
would ever do that to my kids, but just like, I've had very, very close people. I've been godparents to some friends' kids, and we don't talk anymore.
Yeah.
Like that happens. And so, I guess accepting the fluidity of life and things change and just doing something is better than nothing.
Yeah, for sure. So and that might even be the first place for you to start is who would be your, power of attorney,
Right.
with your assets, right? A little bit of a step less, right? It's not necessarily the kids, but it's still important. So, would
Right.
you be up for taking that on as a practice to actually determine like who could be the top three for this?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think whether it's actually legally binding, like I said, just with going through my divorce and the um all the irons that I have in the fire right now, I feel like getting an attorney on board for that as well at this point with the pending case with my other kids. Like I don't know that I want to tackle three lawyers at once right now, but
Sure.
getting at least somebody in mind to
Yeah.
um
Yep. Yeah, and I wouldn't wait till December for something like that. Like your will, because
yeah.
again, remember, your will can be changed, you know,
Hmm.
and again, it's just one of those things that like by not having something like that in place, I imagine that there is stress and incompletion given the family dynamic, right? So it might
Hmm.
be something like, yeah, you don't take care of it this week, but like I wouldn't wait till December either. Because then think about that. You're going to have to wait from now all the way to December with that incompletion in your space.
Yep. Yeah, and I think you speak to something really good there. I think there's a lot of lingering BS that with all the chaos and things and relationships and problems in my life that have gone on for the last 15 years of my life, essentially, it's like it's the least of my problems or not a problem, but it's that lingering weight that's there that doesn't need to be there. Like it's a
Yeah.
relatively easy, I mean, it's not because there's not people in my life that are just, it'd be this person and this person and this person, and this
Yeah.
get this done here and do that there. But to a certain degree, like there is that level of like, just getting, it's a pretty simple get it done
Yeah.
and
Just get it
over
done.
with kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Practice I'm going to give you as well is I want to jump into the survival mechanism exercise
Okay.
and starting to, I know we did some of this in the masculine leader. We're going to go deeper into it. I think we're in a great spot for us to dive into this. So there's an exercise that comes with that, um, where you write out a list of 10 things that you're angry about in life and 10 things that you're sad about, and you just bring it to our next conversation, and we will open up the survival mechanism conversation. And I say that, is that something that you want to dive into for our next session? Is that conversation?
Yeah, I think that's probably an area. I mean, it's kind of what we dove into today. Kind of dipped the toes in
Yes.
that area of like, yeah. And it was interesting. Like, I talked to my cousin till 2 o'clock this morning, and we both had to be up by 6. But it just was like after at the end of the conversation, she's like, "I can tell you're making changes. I can tell you're working on things." But she's like, "I can tell there's a lot of pain still lingering."
Hmm.
And yeah, there is, and I think there's a certain level of those family wounds are never really gone. But it just kind of opened my eyes to like, yeah, there's that. It's kind of like the underlying stress of not having a will or those kind of things. Like it's just that subtle, very deep rooted, far down under a lot of layers of just pain
Yeah.
of like, and some anger and some resentment. I mean, like my both sets of grandparents and great grandparents, one set of great grandparents were very, very involved in my life. And the fact that my parents had both sets of grandparents, I mean, they could go for 2 weeks anywhere, anytime, and my grandparents were happy to take them. And the fact that if I die, I don't know that my parents would see my kids again is like, what the fuck? Like,
Hmm.
what is wrong with you people?
Hmm.
And, it's one of those I can't change it. I feel like I'm complete with it as much as possible, but still there's a certain level of like, what the fuck is how? Like,
Yeah.
how do you not have that? So I think that's a good area to kind of dig into
Yep.
and yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah, I think so too. And yeah, thanks for speaking to that piece exactly, right? Because you nailed it, right? That these things that can feel insignificant, not having a will, right? But not having a will means that, and if something happens to me, I don't know who's taking care of the kids. Well, then it snowballs from there, right? And as we start to look at all these areas of life where, like you're speaking to, there's these subtle incompletions, that's where the weight comes from. That's where the
Hmm.
heaviness, the burden, the resentment comes from. So each of these conversations, these practices that you're doing, these are all steps to start to really like release that. And it does require something. It does require us, going and closing the gap on something like, hey, yeah, maybe the will doesn't feel like it's important right now, but it's all the steps that, because in order for you to get a will in place means you need to find somebody who can be your power of attorney, right? Which
Hmm.
means you have to go create that relationship if you don't have it already. So it's like you're taking these steps along the way to actually create that. So really great
Yep.
work. Um, After the recording, we'll schedule our next session. And yeah, can I give you some acknowledgement before we close?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, hmm. First thing I want to acknowledge you for is for your commitment and I'm going to say ease of what you're bringing to being in conversation with others, creating these pathways to creating coaching clients. Like, I am just present to the naturalness of what you're bringing to the space. Yes, there's, pathways to earning the money and that type of stuff, but like, it's so cool. It's so cool to witness you just like naturally own, like, I'm ready for this. I'm getting feedback. I'm ready to step into this area and explore. It's awesome. It's so awesome to see you bring that energy. Um, I acknowledge you for your depth and your ability to really see that, like, something like rejection, one, it's appearing everywhere, but there's a source, and you're healing that source. Week by week, you're gaining capacity, you're seeing pathways, you're creating more completion. That's really powerful because a lot of people would shy away from that. They'd bury it, they'd hide it, they wouldn't dive into it. But what you're actually doing is you're doing the harder work. You're actually unearthing it. Last thing I want to acknowledge you for is for your leadership and who you are as a father. I mean, um, I'm really present to how much love and care and devotion that you bring, and how much it means for you to that your kids are safe and taken care of. Um, and I acknowledge you for taking these next steps in terms of leadership, of actually establishing, you know, completion there in terms of, hey, I guess the piece that was really present for me there is that, like, by you bringing completion to these areas to actually have, safety nets in place and, things taken care of for them, it actually, like, it frees you up to be able to go pursue the things that you want to at a higher level. So thanks for just owning all of it, man. It's really powerful, and it just shows the work that you're doing.
Like it means a lot. Like just yeah, that acknowledgement. And it's just like you speaking to with the kids. Like I've always been that protective parent, but just the shit I've gone through has really opened my eyes to like, there was a time years ago where I struggled with depression and suicidal thoughts, like my kids don't need me. And just what you're speaking to, just realizing and owning like my kids, they're kind of fucked without me.
Mm,
Like, and just really owning that, like, no, that who do they have?
yeah.
Like, and I think, part of that I think is all this court stuff that I've gone to and for how hard I had to fight for it to realize like they need that. That was worth that fight. So yeah, I
Hmm.
really appreciate it. It just reminding me too of where I've come and what just even again, I think that protectiveness of my kids is like so subconscious and so root to who I am that I don't really acknowledge myself for it. Like, yeah, of
Yeah.
course I take care of my kids, but at what level? Like,
Yes.
and how much does that affect my day to day? Because it's a big deal. I mean, it's not as big a deal as like, you know, whatever, taking some risky business venture. Like, what's that do to the business? Like, no, this affects three kids'
Hmm.
lives drastically. So I really appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And the last thing I'll just say to that too is, like, what it really speaks to is like, okay, so where you were in the past in terms of like that protection and getting you to this point with the kids. It's like, yeah, the next step forward in this is going to call you forward at a higher level of leadership, like you're sensing, right? Creating these relationships, tying up things like wills, that those things are going to put in place structures that actually rises everybody up in the family, even at a higher level. So great work, man.